I'm joined now by the U.S. Senator from Arizona, Mark Kelly. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Brian, thank you for having me on.
So, a lot to talk about. Obviously, the big issue right now is the continuing resolution, the CR, which will determine whether or not the government stays open. But first, just wanted to dive into a topic that had been circulating between you and Elon Musk, and that is that you had reiterated your support online for Ukraine, which, to remind everybody, is a functioning democracy in their battle against Russia, which is not a democracy. And Elon Musk had come out and called you a traitor for expressing your support for that democracy. Can I have your reaction to that?
Well, he's not a serious guy. I've sort of known him a little bit over a decade. I used to, do some stuff with SpaceX and crew safety, and I used to take him seriously, especially in his role at SpaceX.
Yeah.
His role as the CEO and the chief engineer. And I don't know what happened to him. That he suddenly decides it's a good idea to spend $250 million to make sure Donald Trump's the next president. For what, to what end, right? You always got to be suspicious of a billionaire who's trying to get people elected to office and then shows up in the administration as some special, I don't know what that means, special government employee,
Yeah.
and then brings a wrecking ball immediately to the federal government, ruining people's lives, including the lives of veterans. So I go to Ukraine, part of my job. We are our own branch of government, right? I don't work for the president of the United States, and I certainly do not work for Elon Musk. I work for the people of Arizona. And I'm on the Armed Services Committee, I'm on the Intelligence Committee. My job is to get out there in these spots where we've got to make some tough decisions in Congress. The president, he has his decisions to make. I've got my decisions to make. So in that role, I'm there. I'm speaking to the head of intelligence of the Ukrainian military, the people in the Defense Department, government leaders, visiting with veterans in a military hospital, meeting with F-16 pilots, one that I met in Arizona, trying to figure out how things are going for them and what do they need from the U.S. government. And then I come back and I write about my trip. And then this guy called me a traitor.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Brian, when I was flying combat missions over Iraq in 1991, I didn't think there was like some snotty-nosed teenager in South Africa that one day was going to call me a traitor. So I was kind of shocked. But in the regard to like the world on Twitter, it's his platform. He can call me whatever he wants. I don't take him very seriously with the names he's going to throw at me. What I really care about is the stuff he's doing.
Yeah.
He and Donald Trump are doing significant damage to our country.
Well, you had asked to what end, and I think that's an important question because we have seen instances where really the access that he's been given has paid off for him, literally and figuratively. There were a number of investigations or regulatory actions or fines that had been levied against Elon or his companies in almost every agency across the government, agencies which Elon has now taken an axe to himself. Everything from the NLRB to USAID, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau would have had jurisdiction over turning Twitter into a payment processing platform, the Department of Labor, and on and on. And so those are gone by virtue of either firing the inspectors general or being able to just take people off of the boards, for example. And also we've seen how the federal government has moved to give contracts that had previously been allocated to other companies, like Verizon, for example, over to Elon's companies. And so I think the to what end question answered itself quicker than I thought even we had anticipated when he came into government, only to watch a few weeks later him really derive these major benefits for himself and his finances.
Yeah, he's benefiting clearly, and they're doing this in public. They're not trying to hide it. So I think at this point we've got to really push back and stand up for the American people. Who's going to benefit from Elon's policies? Elon.
Yeah.
He's trying to create, he's firing all these people. Part of it is what you say, Brian, right? He's got regulatory agencies that regulate his businesses, whether it's SpaceX or Tesla. He gets rid of those folks. It makes those businesses easier to operate, maybe financially more successful, but at the expense of the American people. It might be environmental, it might be safety. If you can get your rocket approved, the plan to launch. There might be some safety problems that come with that if you try to speed it up without the correct reviews. And in some cases, I think we need to have regulatory reform, but it can't be one guy just firing the people who are regulating his businesses.
Right.
There's
Completely
that
agree.
side of it. The other side is getting rid of a lot of employees. They're trying to create some room in the budget so they can pass this big giant tax cut for rich people. That's part of the reason, but that what he can do is not going to be enough. So then what they're going to do, it's coming. They're going to cut health care for poor people and seniors, either through Medicaid or Medicare. That is on the horizon. That's the next thing that's going to be talked about here when they get to what's called, and I hate to use the term we use here in Congress, but budget reconciliation in the Senate is their vehicle to do that.
So I want to dig into that a little bit because now we're getting into the budget stuff. Right now, there is a CR, a continuing resolution on the table that would determine whether or not the government either stays open or shuts down. And so you've come out and opted to vote against the continuing resolution. Why did you decide to do that?
Well, Brian, this thing's a shit sandwich. I mean, it really is. It gives this president and Elon Musk more power to continue to wreck these government agencies and hurt people. He is ruining people's lives. I had veterans in my office about a week and a half ago that had recently received glowing performance reports.
Yeah.
Then this guy, Elon Musk, fires them for poor performance. Like 3 weeks later, they lose their jobs. One of these guys was working at a government agency. He was a 100% disabled veteran, and now he's going to start a minimum wage job in a kitchen. He's got 3 kids.
Yeah.
This is like hitting this guy in the head with a sledgehammer. It has ruined his life, and there's no reason for it. Elon thinks he's a smart guy. He's pretty good at some things. He's a pretty good physicist, rocket designer. He's done a pretty good job. He makes an okay car. By the way, I just got rid of mine today. I thought about driving it into the Potomac or like on fire. I
Yeah.
did neither of those. But he's not good at this. And I hope he realizes it pretty soon that this is damaging the US economy. It's hurting real people. It's also hurting him in some ways. By the way, if you see the stock price of Tesla.
Yeah, down between 46 and 48% in the last 3 months. Not exactly a huge
It's
win
also
on
it's
the
also
market
hurting
front.
his brand and his reputation.
Yeah.
I don't know if he cares about that, but he should.
Your position is the one that's shared by everybody in the House and the vast majority of your colleagues in the Senate. And yet, as of this recording, there are 3 senators, Chuck Schumer, Senator Cortez Masto, and Senator Fetterman, who have come out in favor of this continuing resolution to keep the government open, kind of in deference to the plan that Republicans want. And so why is there a disconnect here? And why wasn't there a line drawn sooner that basically says that if the government is going to stay open, then we need to extract concessions from Republicans? That didn't happen. And so really, this is Republicans being able to dictate what they want to happen without any buy-in from a party that they need buy-in from. They need 7 votes from Democrats.
Yeah, well, it's a tough call. Either decision, you can make a case for either one. Ultimately, for me, it really came down to we got to stand up to Donald Trump. And by the way, Republicans did not negotiate with us in good faith. So, yeah, maybe you can make an argument we should have been harder on them earlier. But they did this. They decided to go it alone on this. It was the our way or the highway approach to keeping the government open. And that's not the way this is usually done. It's not the way it was done previously, under Chuck Schumer or Mitch McConnell in
Yeah.
the Senate or other members of the House on either side. It's usually Democrats and Republicans working together. That is not this. Having
And
said that, I made my decision based on all the information I had,
yeah.
and those other folks did the same thing.
And so what's your message to folks in the broader Democratic base who are seeing the kind of the disarray, not to use the Dems in disarray term, but the disarray that we're engaged in right now as we try to figure out a path forward, and are upset about the fact that there isn't unanimity within the Democratic caucus in the Senate right now, in a moment where I think what a lot of people are looking for is a sense of fight.
Yeah, well, we're all fighting in one way or the other, right? And it might look like we're in disarray, like the Democrats are in disarray, but democracy is messy. And this is unprecedented, what these guys are doing to our democracy and our federal government. Donald Trump, as we all know, the Republicans even know this. He is a very unique figure. Whether you like him or you hate him, he is rather stands out as an individual in the world we live in, as when you consider the presidents over the last 100 years, right?
Yeah.
He's doing significant damage. And what I would tell people is it's not going to be like this forever. And if we fight back, we can win elections. And we have to. We've got to push back against this president who has taken unprecedented steps that is really hurting the American people. It's hurting the economy. I mean, his tariff policy is insane. And what I think is really crazy is he's able to get members of his cabinet and members of the Republican Party in Congress to parrot these ridiculous talking points about tariffs. I don't know when these guys are going to get off the sideline and say, and look, just look at the market. The markets basically tell the truth about things.
Right.
If you want the truth meter, watch what the markets do. And I'm usually not in favor of pointing at the stock market and saying whether a president's successful or not. But in this case, when you see him announcing tariffs and then flipping back and forth kind of randomly between one amount and another, and I'm going after this country now and this thing, and I'm going to tariff champagne. So our champagne industry in the United States, which does not exist, by the way, is going to be more successful.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, when he's doing this crazy stuff, and then you see how the stock market reacts, it's because of him. And that's the truth meter in this chaotic, dynamic time period with this kind of president.
And I think what's especially ironic in all of that, to put a fine point on your point, is that the same people who just a few months back were claiming that we were in the throes of one of the worst economies in modern American history are now seeing a stock market and an economy that is aggressively worse than where we were by a marked degree. And yet they're claiming that this is an economy that's fundamentally strong, even though we're in correction territory and we're seeing an overall economic downturn across the entire economy right now. So
and Donald Trump, and then he says, "Well, the boom is coming."
Yeah,
the boom is coming. Well, it's not coming. Not if the policies stay the same. I think Goldman Sachs just put out a thing that somebody told me. I haven't checked it yet, but like a 1% tariff turns into like a 0.1% decrease in GDP.
Yeah, and he's talking about 200% tariffs right now.
Yes, exactly. When you talk about those numbers, those are big numbers, and it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt people that are buying stuff, and it's going to hurt workers. People will lose their jobs over it. The economy will contract. We could wind up in a recession. It could be a significant one. And if he keeps it up, if he keeps doubling down on stupid, it'll just continue to get worse.
Perfectly put. We'll leave it there. Senator Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time today.
All right, Brian. Thank you. Appreciate it.